Dr. Chinni Pulluru is back, and I wanted to just get an update on what we think about the Walmart announcement. We've been asked a lot by all of our listeners, so I wanted to just invite her back and talk a bit more about her perspective on what happened. So, Dr. Chinni, thank you so much for coming on board.
Hey, Liz. Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
So, the biggest question people asked is, do you know why it happened, and do you have a perspective on could it have been prevented? Are there things that the operations or the system or the company could have done?
So it's complicated and like all of healthcare, right? There's not any one solution. I mean, the reality is that we were given a fantastic opportunity and I'm grateful for that from Walmart leadership. There's a lot of resources and thought and mentorship that was poured into this for all of us. It's when we look back at the trajectory, the first Walmart Health Clinic opened in 2019, September.
Yes.
We're about 5 years out now, and 2 of those years were COVID, right?
Yes.
When all of ambulatory care suffered. And so, when you're trying to do a multi-specialty de novo enterprise in, many states nationally, it's not an easy thing to stand up when you're facing a pandemic, when the rest of the country's ambulatory care clinics were also empty, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to keep that in perspective, that the experiment hit a black swan. The other thing I would say is, oftentimes we tend to underestimate the complexity of healthcare operations,
Mm-hmm.
and the deep understanding that one has to have. And we had some really great healthcare operators within Walmart Health, but I do think that, we need to listen to that and understand that it takes a while. And, we were given 5 years and I'm grateful for that experiment. And I hope this is not the end of Walmart in healthcare. But it's just it's continues to reinforce how difficult this can be.
Yes.
So
I really love that. When Walmart announced it's closing 51 clinics and shutting down its telehealth service, there was questions about, will it stay? And I agree that there are other opportunities for it to stay in certain parts of the healthcare space, whether it's optometry and pharmacy and other areas. I think in addition, also the international space. We're seeing a lot of growth with health membership in Central America and Mexico. And so I think there are plenty of opportunities. And would you agree? And just looking at the retail giant as a whole?
yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic of where Walmart is going to affect healthcare, right? I mean, I wish it would have been through this clinic space, and who knows, never say never. But I look at, the fact that the pharmacies, 80% of Walmarts are in underserved areas, and pharmacies have clinical services, and the pharmacist space in healthcare is growing, and I think Walmart can lean in there. The optical space as well. But, international, like how exciting is international, right? Whether it be,
Mm-hmm.
I've been in discussions with Mexico and India and whether it's in Africa. I mean, there's a huge opportunity to affect healthcare delivery internationally without some of the complexity, the regulations, the huge labor overhead that exists in the US that I think is a real opportunity for Walmart, and the trust is still there. So, and then holy cow, I mean, think about the fact that it is still the largest employer, right? Whether it
Mm-hmm.
be, what Lisa Woods is doing. I'm a huge fan in the employer space. I mean, I remember doing a value in healthcare course at Harvard where one of the case studies was Walmart, and I happened to be at Walmart. And so, what we can do on the employer driven side is phenomenal. And so I'm optimistic. I'm gung ho. I'm saddened by what happened with Walmart Health, but this is by no means the end of Walmart's foray in healthcare. In fact, I think there's definitely opportunity.
And would you say not only is there opportunity, but there's as you mentioned earlier, this ability to try and fail and try and fail. A lot of entrepreneurs, need to know that there's a resilience factor. And sometimes it's important to actually know when to stop. Sometimes even when we're building new projects within a large conglomerate, there are zombie projects that kind of move in and they're not gaining a ton of traction, but they're kind of there and they're eating up costs and they're sort of structured in a way that, I just think it's not as effective. And so it's also really important for business and clinical folks to come together and say, is this working really? Is this what we envisioned? Would you agree in terms of the entrepreneurship spirit that I think this country has?
Absolutely. And, one of the things I learned at Walmart is fail fast, right? And move on. And so, the grocery moment was they tried to do grocery 10 times and now they're the largest grocer in the United States. And so,
Hmm,
I think that it's important and it's unfortunate that this Walmart Health was on an upward trajectory and doing better. And it's unfortunate, but there's economic headwinds, and I understand the decision because when there's economic headwinds, sometimes you have to decide where your investments are, and you have to
that's
put those
right.
investments that have much higher growth or a shorter trajectory of growth. Healthcare has a very long trajectory of growth, as we know. And so, it's having been a part of what Walmart Health became and very proud of it still, it saddened me. But I completely understand the leadership's decision because ultimately the retail part and the international side of it is the core business. And, we have to reinvest where it matters.
I love that also because it's a very practical but also important decision that people have to make. And I know there are a lot of opinions about it, but I feel like you've taken a very positive stance in terms of what this means for those that did put the groundwork in and the labor and the sweat and tears that went into building clinics. What would you say to all those that are still in it and or winding it down? Like it sounds like you feel very beholden to this was an important, I would say, not only engagement tool, a way to experiment, but also to build their careers and learn from.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, right? And it's extraordinarily hard to be in an environment where people are losing their jobs or have to move on and make decisions. But for me, when I look back at my 4 years, and I encourage my former team and other people to look back at, is the incredible lessons you learn. When you're building something from the ground up, you take with you lessons that you'll use no matter what enterprise you go to. And you have to take heart that you tried, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we treated about 500,000 patients from what I know. And that's not a small number. We also put some core thoughts and seeded into healthcare. The idea of transparent pricing being received well. The
Mm-hmm.
idea that, you need to bring healthcare access to areas of the country that don't have it, and people are hungry for that. The idea that dental matters, right? And, lastly, I would say it's the idea that it's important to be consumer centric. I mean, that's what Walmart does very well. And I take from it that, you know, even with the rapid growth, even with COVID, even with all the challenges, our NPS was 80, which is far above most healthcare organizations, if not all. And our felt cared for score was 96 as we scaled and rapidly grew. And we're encumbered by just so many challenges, right? And so we did a lot right. And I think it's important, even though this is ending, to remember all the things we did right and hold on to those things as you go into your next enterprise. Like I know everything I do will always have that lens in it. What are we doing? Are we listening to the consumer? What are we doing for customers? How do they feel when they walk out the door? And that's so I encourage my former colleagues to really think about that.
I love that. I'm listening and hearing you say all these lessons learned. So it sounds like transparent pricing, meeting the consumer where they are, focused on innovation and access to even dental care and other areas that are sometimes overlooked. Are there other also lessons from the clinics and building out that you think like viewers and listeners would want to share with them?
Yeah, we iterated fast. And I think that's important, very fast iteration. But I would say the largest lesson to learn here is that having a eye of making sure that your decisions from the beginning are good decisions, and making sure that the people that make those decisions have been in the healthcare delivery space, right? Because we had to rip and replace technology. We had to do a lot over and over again. And in a 5 year lifespan, when you eat up a year trying to do something over, that costs money and it costs effort. And, I think it's important to make those decisions. It's measure twice, cut once, right? And I think that's important when you're starting a new healthcare enterprise, and the focus on really making sure there's operational intelligence in it. And so, but there's a lot to be learned. And I think we need to learn those lessons. And I'm gung ho about where Walmart can still affect healthcare both nationally and internationally. I don't think we're done, or I don't think they're done.
What a wonderful thing to end on. I thank you so much for the time. And I think the listeners will really appreciate this. So thank you for listening to Dr. Pulluru. I think we are going to be focused on in the future of innovating in healthcare. We'll continue to do that. Thank you for listening to Digital MD. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Liz.
Bye.